Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. We got Chris Cheng here. We're going to get to him in just a second. We are at SHOT Show 2025. I want to put a huge shout out to the folks at Palmetto State Armory and Right to Bear for allowing us to have this studio here. And I want to give a huge shout out to all the guys from Forge Relations who've been absolutely kicking ass all week and making us look probably a lot better than we are. Chris Cheng, thanks for joining us,
Of
my
course,
friend.
thanks for having me.
The last minute thing, we kind of reached out to you last week. I was talking to a representative up in Washington State. What I want everyone to understand first, before we get into kind of the heavy stuff that we're going to talk about, who is Chris Cheng?
Yeah,
Tell us about you.
So I'm Top Shot Chris Cheng. I'm History Channel's Top
Yes, you
Shot
are.
Season 4 champion. I came from the tech industry. I used to work at Google, and I'm a self-taught amateur who was inspired by Top Shot on the History Channel, which was this incredible show showcasing a variety of weapons and these incredible challenges. And I trained really hard, and I
Were
ended
you a
up
gun
winning.
guy prior to that?
I mean, I shot guns before, but I didn't consider myself a gun guy. I did not consider myself a Second Amendment advocate at the time either. I was just a guy who liked to go shoot guns every so often,
All right, yeah.
on the weekend with my buddies or my dad.
Yeah.
But winning Top Shot just changed my life. 13
What year did you win that?
2012.
2012.
So I'm now going into my 13th year in the firearms industry as a firearm safety advocate for the industry, and then an outreach ambassador too, right? Trying to send this message that the Second Amendment is for everyone.
It is.
Right? Regardless
Amen.
of whether you're Asian, you're Latino, you're LGBT, you're Jewish, you're this, you're that. Look, like,
It is for everyone.
right, we are fighting up against this negative stereotype that, right, gun owners are, middle-aged white guys, right?
Right.
And somehow that gun ownership is owned by that demographic, which is not true, right? This is a civil right, right? The Second Amendment is a civil right, and no demographic owns a civil right. The civil rights are for all Americans.
It is.
Right?
It is. And yet when you take a look at the Second Amendment, that is a right that seems to be predominantly exercised by one demographic group. And yet you take a look at a lot of other constitutional rights and everyone seems to exercise it. And I think that in order for the Second Amendment community to thrive in the future, there needs to be a need to diversify and bring more people into the tent. What do you think of that?
Yeah, and this is a huge Big Ten opportunity, right?
Huge.
It's I live in San Francisco, right, which is obviously predominantly hyper liberal, predominantly anti-gun. But there are a lot of gun owners. There's a lot of closeted gun owners, and also a lot of gun curious people who they have heard about guns, but they're unknowledgeable. They don't know anyone, right, who maybe owns a firearm, right, and who could teach them how to shoot.
Right.
But over the past decade or so, right, I've been seeing more and more interest amongst my LGBT friends who are, and they know me, right? They know my background.
Sure.
I'm a champion shooter. I have guns.
You have a lot of them.
I have a lot of guns.
And you know how to pull a trigger,
Yeah,
apparently, too.
exactly. And for me, my advocacy, my activism is it spans grassroots advocacy, which for me means, look, like, if one person wants to have a sit down and talk about the Second Amendment, about civil rights, around why the Second Amendment is important for us as Americans, I'm happy to talk to that one person or a small group or, upwards, larger, crowds
Hundreds
of,
if need be.
thousands,
Yep,
etc. So I've really enjoyed seeing the cultural change over this past decade of more people of color, LGBT community, at least having an open mind, right, about firearms and whether firearms ownership is for them, or hey, at minimum, like, go learn how to shoot, right? And you're gonna have a great time. And look,
It is fun.
and then if you don't end up deciding to purchase a firearm, like, that's fine. But at least getting more Americans to understand why gun ownership is important to so many Americans, why this is such a critical civil right in the context of what is happening in our society, which is there are certain there are certain minority groups that are at higher risk,
Absolutely,
right,
they
for
are.
being attacked.
Well, let's talk about two communities that you belong to, okay? Because you belong to the Asian community, which has a history of having violence committed against them. You belong to the LGBTQ community, which unfortunately also has a history of having violence committed at them for no reason other than who they are as a human being, which is disgusting when you think about it, okay? And then we kind of saw this general sense of disarray during the pandemic and stuff. And we saw this huge influx of new gun owners, and they weren't people that looked like me. Okay, they were women, they were minorities, they were members of the LGBTQ community. Is that still a trend that you're seeing, that the largest, fastest growing demographic group of firearms are the people who don't look like me?
Yeah, and it's definitely caught the attention of the firearms industry, right? Where a few years ago, we saw an unprecedented 43% year-over-year increase in first-time Asian American gun owners. And
Interesting.
I mean, I have never seen anything like that.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah, it really is phenomenal. On the LGBT side of things, it's right, the narrative and the conversations that I often have with my LGBT friends is, you know, a lot of them are anti-gun. A lot of them are also anti-law enforcement. Okay, so let's just say, and I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. I'm trying to help.
How are they going to protect themselves if they're
Right.
anti-gun?
This is exactly the
Yeah.
question that, right? It's like when I have these conversations, I'm trying to lead them to water. And right, it's because the line of questioning just to help them understand why the Second Amendment is important for them is, right, if you don't trust the police, and so if you're in trouble and you don't want the police to come help you, then who's going to
Gonna
come
help
save
you.
you?
Yeah, who's saving you?
Who's saving you, right? So instilling these values of personal responsibility, of incepting the idea that you are your own first responder,
Yes.
right?
And that your life is worth preserving and protecting.
That's right. And uh, if a firearm is an appropriate tool for you, like then that's great. And I want everyone to at least consider, right, firearms ownership, firearms, usage, and understanding safe firearm handling, right, and what to do if you do see a firearm that's maybe it's
laying around,
laying
like that.
around, right?
First thing I did with both my boys when they were old enough is the only thing I taught them for years was how to unload a firearm.
Yep.
That was it.
Yeah.
I waited until they were in their later teens before I taught them how to pull a trigger. But, in case there was one laying around, they could go to school and someone's got, how can you disarm that firearm right away and do it safely?
So, right, just earlier this week, I'm posting all my SHOT Show photos, all these like awesome, firearms and products. And one of my gay friends, like, he's like, whoa, that shotgun's really cool. It's like something you'd see in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, anything you need in Jurassic Park is like here.
Yeah, that's right.
And
that's
so,
right.
but he's like, but then, right, this is where it's important to be visible, and it's important to be present as a gun owner. For me, it's like as a gun owner, as a member, as a gay man, as an Asian person, because and this is another gay Asian friend, right, in San Francisco, and that his initial response to one of my posts then led to him saying, I've always thought about learning how to shoot a gun. And that is my opening, right? That is my opening. All right, well, let's find a date. Like, let's get some of our other gay friends
dip
together.
our toes in the water and see how it feels, right?
Yeah. And that is an opportunity that all of us in the gun community, you've experienced that at one point or another, right? Where you've got a family member, a colleague, or someone who's like, like you
I'd
shoot
like to
guns?
check that out. Yeah.
I like to check that out. And then, but too often we let that opportunity like pass, right? We hear someone say, I want to learn how to shoot. And then you're like, oh, well, I'm really busy. I don't think I have time. I've got, take care of my kids
Take
or
your
whatever.
friend to the range, man.
That's it, right? It's like you gotta take advantage of that moment where someone's interested, and you got to get them to the range.
Strike where the iron's
and,
hot.
And if it's not you taking them, it's at minimum you saying, hey, here's a range near you where you can rent a gun.
Go see so-and-so, they'll get you set up.
Pay whatever, $60 for a class or something, but like you take that momentum, right? And leverage the moment.
Well, listen, everyone, the reason I wanted to bring Chris on is because he and I share a very common vision that the Second Amendment is for everybody, and it is absolutely positively for everybody. And I think those in the Second Amendment community need to start focusing on other communities where we have similarities. We may not agree on everything. I don't really care. But we can all agree that every life is worth preserving, okay? You're a member of a really outstanding organization called Operation Blazing Sword. And the way we got connected is I was geeking out on the Ocean State tactical case, and I was looking at all the amicus briefs, and I see like, oh, look at that. Operation Blazing Sword filed an amicus brief. So I decided to geek out and read it. It was a fantastic brief. And it was a fantastic brief. Not only was the law very concise and accurate, but there was these descriptions of lived experiences from people in those communities that guys like me cannot appreciate, cannot understand, didn't even have knowledge of it until I started reading that memorandum. And then, of course, it starts clicking in like, well, yeah, these people are in marginalized communities where people do try to do bad things to them. So tell me tell me about Operation Blazing Sword, how long they've been around, and how you got involved in them.
Yeah, so Operation Blazing Sword is also a part of the Pink Pistols.
Yeah.
So both organizations have a long storied history in the gun community. Operation Blazing Sword was started after the Pulse shootings in Orlando,
Down
Florida.
in Orlando, yeah.
And that was around like 2018 time era. At the time, the deadliest domestic terrorist attack in our country.
Yeah, it was horrible.
I think it was something like 50 killed, and then I think over 100, I think, injured.
And the Pulse was a gay nightclub, right?
Yes, Pulse was a gay nightclub. People were it was a normal evening, just
everyone
people
out having a good
party.
time.
Yeah, exactly. But out of that tragedy, Operation Blazing Sword was born, and so Erin Paulette, she started a very simple like Google Map website that basically she said, if you are a firearms instructor, or if you're in the gun community and you want to help train the LGBT community, put your information on this Google Map.
Okay.
And we ended up getting 1,500 volunteers and
1,500 volunteers.
1,500 and the initial thought was, hey, if you're already a firearms instructor, hey, like we'll be lead gen for you, right? And like they'll go and pay, right, be a regular student, pay classes. But we had instructors, and a lot of these instructors are straight. These are straight white guys who are like 100%
I want to help.
Yeah. I want to help protect, the LGBT community. And if they want to learn how to shoot a gun, like I'm not going to charge them for taking a class. So we saw this, this like unprecedented positive response, right? Again, out of this tragedy. And the Pink Pistols was formed in the year 2000. And it was about this idea that armed gays don't get bashed.
They don't.
Right. And it's a very simple idea that our messaging is multifold, but it's towards members of the LGBT community, right? To normalize gun ownership, right? In this subculture, to be, look, I'm gay and I'm a gun owner, and they're not in conflict.
No.
Right. I don't have any conflict.
Last time I checked, your life is just as valuable as anyone else's life and worth preserving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like sometimes identity politics can get a little annoying. It's a little grating, but like the reality is, like, a lot of people, they have very strong rooted emotions around their identity, right? Whether it's I'm a gay man, I'm Asian, or I'm a woman, I'm a Jew, I'm a Catholic or Christian, right? And so we really have to meet people where they are, right? And this notion of, right, armed gays don't get bashed, because we all know what gay bashing is. I mean, that's a fear. It's a real fear.
And there are too many incidents of that to count. That's happened already.
So one message is towards the LGBT community. Another message to the rest of the American public, that don't mess with us.
Leave us alone.
Yeah, leave us alone.
Right.
Like, we don't want to bother you. Don't bother us.
You want to live the life that you've chosen to live for yourself.
Yeah, and this isn't about us like trying to, change anybody's mind.
You're not trying to push an agenda.
Yeah, like I don't have an agenda. I just want to be left alone and have the exact same freedoms that every other American has in our country, right? And the diversity debate, we're going to get a little political for a second.
Hard not to do it.
I know, right?
This topic.
Right,
that's fine.
The Democrats have totally hijacked the diversity agenda and turn it into this culture war.
Wedge issue.
Yeah, of like forcing it down everyone's throats, of making it, just it's such a burdensome topic for a lot of Americans to swallow, like myself included. It's like when a lot of Democrats talk about diversity, right? It's about shoehorning in token people who are not qualified,
right. Getting away from the meritocracy and getting into DEI,
right? Exactly, all the DEI stuff, like, right? And so what I'm trying to say here is that what Operation Blazing Sword and Pink Pistols Like we're not trying to force or we're not trying to strong arm anybody here, right?
No.
This is us trying to have a respectful conversation with America and say, we're here, we're queer, we want guns, we want to protect ourselves in the exact
Absolutely.
same way that you want to, and have that commonality.
Yeah.
Right. Have that
Yeah.
bond as Americans. And you said earlier, right, we're not going to agree on everything, but we're not
That's what makes us
supposed to.
American,
Yeah, exactly. Like
right?
we're a huge country, 350 some million people, right? We're not going to agree on everything. And cancel culture, right, has been so damaging,
Mhm.
right, to our country, right? It's like, oh, if I disagree with you on this one thing,
Right.
like can't talk to you
Well,
anymore. And it's
listen,
like,
the conservative movement apparently has this 12-issue checkbox, and if you don't check all 12, you're not a real conservative. And
yeah,
I've been very critical that the tent needs to be bigger. It needs to be based on inclusiveness, not
yeah.
exclusivity.
Yeah, everyone likes to issue these purity tests, these political purity tests, and um, it's contributing to this hyper polarization,
Yeah.
right? And also just like the hyperbole that we see on all sides.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of Americans, those of us in like this mushy middle of, right? It's like, well, I'm a Republican, but I don't believe all the Republican things. But I'm definitely like not a Democrat kind
Right.
of thing. Right? It's like there's lots of people who are having those kind
Their
of
own identity crisis.
yeah. But for me, this is all about establishing what are my personal morals and my values, and when it comes to the Constitution and our civil rights, it's very clear for me, right, that our First Amendment and our Second Amendment rights in particular are extremely important. And for, well, let's speak about the Asian community for just a brief second. The Asian American community for decades have been non-existent in American politics, in
They
polling.
do kind of keep to themselves on that issue, on those issues. Yeah.
If you look at political polls on whatever issue, if that's broken down by race,
Mm-hmm.
see white people, the black vote, the Latino vote, and oftentimes the Asian vote, not even there.
Not even mentioned.
Just like
It's
not
true.
even mentioned. And we are often this invisible and silent by choice. Like the Asian American community is stereotypically very quiet, heads down. Let's get the work done. We don't
Yep.
need to sing our own praises or advertise our accomplishments. But I think that's been to our detriment, right? And but that's changing.
Good.
Right, the past 5 years in particular, with the increase in attacks against Asian Americans, and more Asian Americans understanding that, oh, my civil rights actually are important,
They're
right?
immensely important.
Yeah, and we're in this moment of Asian Americans literally finding our voice, right? How do you talk about civil rights? It's taken me, 13 years, right, of practice and experience talking about Second Amendment advocacy.
And how to be approachable about the whole thing. Yeah.
And I mean, sure, I've had my successes and failures, but like the point is, you gotta try.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like I'm not afraid of failure, but there are obviously a lot of people who are afraid to even try a new thing because of potential fear of failure.
Yeah.
Or embarrassment.
Get outside that comfort zone.
Right. Oh, I might say or do something embarrassing or stupid. It's like, look, like
You will.
probably are.
You will.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
Exactly.
Because you were that way when you first started getting into firearms. I was that way when I first started getting into
Yeah.
firearms. And then we just learn. And we're an open book and we keep learning.
Mhm. But right, the most important part here is, again, for me to normalize this concept that if you're an American, and then specifically, right, if you're part of the LGBT community or you're Asian American, that gun ownership is a huge part of this civil rights conversation, that it is a key way that millions of Americans defend ourselves, right, and defend our families, defend our property. And that's okay, right? This is a normal conversation. And in San Francisco, where I live, it is not a common conversation.
It's an uncomfortable conversation for them, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's I think a lot of people who live in cities often live in like bubbles.
Yes.
Where you have this false sense of security.
I don't know what everyone's worried about. I don't see it anywhere.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. That attitude of just, oh, I don't see it, like everything must be fine. It's like, you know what? Like if you pay attention to the crime that's happening right in your area, and I think a lot of people like to think they're special or somehow immune
Right.
to crime. And it's like, I don't think I'm special. Like there's nothing special about me when I'm walking down the street that would prevent a criminal
From trying to make you the
me.
victim. That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but the more that bad guys know, hey, like I'm a CCW holder. There are more and more CCW holders in San Francisco, and that should hopefully contribute to making a safer society in,
You know what I
in the
would
city.
love to see your organization be to do more of is that as I follow this legislation in all these crazy states passing gun control legislation, right? And then you go take a look at the public hearing they had at the House or the public hearing they had at the Senate. Guess what every person who testifies looks like?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they all say the same thing. You ain't taking my rights. Damn
Yeah.
you, you're not taking my rights.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, these state legislatures have tuned these people out years ago. I don't go down to Olympia and testify. They're not going to listen to me. What if all of this testimony that we saw in some of these bills came from marginalized communities? Because I believe that there's a disparate impact on the marginalized communities than it is on people such as myself when we start disarming people.
Yeah.
I think that people in certain communities have a far higher likelihood of being victimized, and therefore they are more radically affected by gun control than in communities where you don't typically see victimization occur. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's a great idea, and thankfully, I'm happy to say that the NSSF, which is the Firearms Industry Trade Association, they have done an amazing job of connecting with Operation Blazing Sword, APAGOA, which is the Asian Pacific American Gun Owners,
which was also in on the amicus brief that was on Ocean State. They
exactly.
one of the authors on that.
And then there's the National African American.
They were in on it also.
Association. They arranged for me to testify in 2021 when the Biden gun control bills were coming down the pipeline, and I went to the United States Senate Judiciary Committee, and I had a very unique message.
You did. A message that many of them have not heard nor considered.
Yeah, and I looked these senators in the eye and I said, look, like as a gay Asian American, I am at an increased risk, right? And it's not just in this moment. It's one of these, look, it was Asians today. It's gonna be the LGBT community tomorrow, and then when it's not them, it's the Latinos and
the
then
Jews, because they've been getting the short end of the stick lately in this country too.
So the messaging was, this issue, crime impacts us all. Those of us with a heightened risk profile, however, all the gun control schemes and gun control bills that are restricting our right to defend and protect ourselves is extremely dangerous, right? Don't tell me how many rounds to put, in my magazine. Like, I don't think 10 rounds is enough.
Well,
why 10 rounds?
And here's the thing. This is what I loved about that Ocean State brief, because there was an alluding in there that the types of violence that's committed on your communities is oftentimes not one-on-one violence.
Correct, yeah.
It's a gang of people ganging up on one person. And you only got 10 rounds to save your life, and there's 5 guys jumping on you trying to beat you to death.
Yep.
I have no problem if you're carrying 100 rounds.
Yeah, exactly, right. And in self-defense, it's a little numbers game of, I need to have more ammo, more magazines than there are bad guys.
That's right. You got to win the fight. It's the only way to win the fight.
And I want, and this all comes back to choice and to freedom, that let the individual decide, right, how many rounds that they need, right, in their given situation. I mean, the reality for my CCW configuration is going to be different than like my home defense situation. I'm 5'9", 165, and I generally wear like slimmer clothes. So like I may not want, a full size, gun on me. And I have a Glock 43. I mean, subcompact.
Yeah.
I mean, but I'm not going to carry, 5 extra magazines, when I'm,
and a tourniquet.
Yeah.
Don't ever carry 5 magazines and a tourniquet. They'll be all over your ass about that one, man. All right, listen, we're running out of time here. What I want you to look in the camera and tell people is, number one, how can they follow Chris Cheng and learn more about him? And then number two, and this is really important, How can they give back to groups like Operation Blazing Sword and Pink Pistols or any other organization out there? Because you and I both agree, and I want all of you to know, the Second Amendment is for everybody. All right, and we need more allies in this fight. So tell folks how they can find out more about Chris Cheng and then about these organizations.
Yeah, so I have a website, topshotchris.com, and I'm on social media at topshotchris. So pretty easy to remember that one. And if you're interested in donating to or supporting Operation Blazing Sword / Pink Pistols, you can go to our website, operationblazingsword.org. If you're willing to sign up as an instructor and put your information right up on the Operation Blazing Sword website to send to the LGBT community this message that your firearms instruction, your gun shop is LGBT friendly, that goes a tremendous way. And then if you are interested in supporting the Asian Pacific American Gun Owners Association, you can go to apagoa.org. And thank you so much.
Oh, man, Chris, thank
on.
you.
This is
Thank
great.
you. He is Chris Cheng. He's a good shot, but he's out there doing a lot of other really, really important work. Remember, the Second Amendment is for everybody. Chris, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Well, and just to give people the type of understanding of the financial catastrophic occurrence that occurred, you and I are both privy to people who have been involved in lawful self-defense situations, pulled the trigger with legal justification, faced potential legal consequences, and had to fight for their freedom. Didn't have coverage. How much money did it cost them to win their freedom?
You know, I really don't think that people really can grasp, you know, the magnitude of expenses. You know, most recently, and you and I have talked about this in the past, the Kyle Rittenhouse case brought a lot to light.
Right to bear, that's right, legal protection for self-protection. Listen, good lawyers aren't cheap, cheap lawyers aren't good. You're not truly prepared unless you have right to bear back you. You will always get an attorney-answered hotline, so you will always have a confidential phone call. There are no cap limits for either civil or criminal defense. This covers all forms of self-defense. So from a fist to a firearm, from a fat lip to a dead body, you are covered, and you will have some of the nation's most passionate 2A attorneys in your corner fighting for you. And right now, if you visit my friends at protectwithbear.com and you use the promo code WGL, you will receive 10% off. Listen, you need to protect yourself so that you can protect them. Visit my good friends at protectwithbear.com.